Hi everyone, welcome back to this week's Admiration, where we are looking at a finance ad from the UK. Sounds like it might be a bit dull. We see many of them in the UK and we see very many of them that are similar, but you won't be disappointed this week. There's definitely something to admire about it. Shall we take a look at the ad, Isa?
Yeah, let's have a look.
Excellent. Certainly very different to what we normally see for a bank. And we do talk about how important it is to break category codes and really stand out. And you can certainly see that that's something they've tried to do here. Shall we jump into the results and see how people have responded to it?
Yeah, let's do that. It always tries to play the ad again. It feels like everyone wants to clearly watch it one more time.
Why not?
Yeah. So we're looking here at how the ad performed compared to a financial services norm. So personal banking brands, insurance brands, and in that sense, both from a sales impact and a brand impact perspective, the ad's doing quite well. I think what comes out strongest there is how distinctive it is, very much like you were saying, Kim. It's very unique. It's very different to the quite, I guess, like boring standards for the category in a way. The traditional players, I think, have advertised in a very consistent yet potentially like safe way for a long time. And Monzo's come in and done something kind of quite groundbreaking. And that really comes through with how people interpret it.
And I think that's like super important to have the bravery to do that. Like the whole brand is about breaking down those category codes and showing that banking doesn't have to be something that you dread, or looking after money doesn't have to be something that fills you with anxiety, and you can take control of it and you can have a different and a better experience by using Monzo. So it makes complete sense that they've kind of followed through on what their brand is all about and how the brand is breaking the category codes, and made sure that they've taken that into their advertising in a way that makes people really kind of sit up and pay attention and bring out that kind of emotional benefit, I guess, for the juxtaposing of kind of all of those horrible things with what can be really quite a nice thing.
Yeah, definitely.
So highly distinctive. I mean, also really good to see that that's harnessed for the brand, right? If you look at that unaided brand recall, again, as a slightly less established brand, and breaking category codes, it might have been harder for their brand to play a role in that, and for people to expect it to be financial services. But obviously, the whole showing the bad and then showing the good, and showing that it's Monzo that brings them the good, clearly gives a really strong role for the brand. So breaking category codes whilst harnessing it for your brand is a really nice combination.
Yeah.
Nice. So overall, they've done pretty well. But when we were talking about it, there's a group of people that it worked particularly well for, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, naturally, people who already use Monzo really enjoyed the ad. They understood it a lot better. They felt love towards it. They really get it. but also younger people versus older people. So when we look at people under 45 versus people older 45, there's a big divide there. So if we just filter the results quickly down to the adults under 45, you actually see how much those results go up for that age group. There might be an element there of the Monzo user base being particularly young compared to your average bank. And you were looking at some stats, weren't you, Kim?
Yeah, so when I had a little look at this, and who knows if they're fully up to date and accurate, but it made intuitive sense that the average age for a Monzo user was about 34. And actually, that's increased over recent years as they've become more and more relevant to more of the population where they started as being maybe very young and not as credible. That's definitely expanded. Whereas if we take HSBC, which was obviously the biggest bank in the UK, average user, I think, was like 44. So like a whole, 10 years older. So I think that does make sense.
Yeah. But yeah, in the top 3% of all finance ads we've tested for sales impact, in the top 5% for on brand impact for all the finance ads we've tested in the UK amongst that group of under 45 years old. So that's quite significant.
It's huge. And I guess, I mean, they like it. The visuals are really bold and vibrant and, and it's quite a clever idea. It's also very different. But I guess also to your point, like if younger people are a bit more open to the idea that you can start to change how banking's done and you don't need to be stuck in the ways of the old institutions, then I guess the whole idea of that contrast is probably particularly resonant as well.
Yeah, definitely.
Can we dive a bit more into that kind of emotional response and how they're feeling?
Yeah, for sure. I think with that, there's an even clearer divide between the younger and the older audience in terms of how they received the ad emotionally. So I guess if we focus first on the younger guys, since we were looking at them already,
Yeah.
yeah, we can see they're massively over-indexing in love versus the norm, over-indexing in laughter as well. There are obviously some funny elements with that juxtaposition that kind of make you laugh throughout it. A little bit of a confusion still, so slightly above the norm, but not significantly. But when we actually look at the over 45s, you can see the trend is the complete opposite. So they feel a lot more confusion. They don't quite understand what the ad is trying to say. And that then affects their love reaction to it and their laughter reaction to it as well. So you can see their love significantly under the norm for that group. Laughter just average. And then confusion is quite high there at 17% when the norm is 6.
Yeah, that's almost three times clearly what's going on there. So yeah, clearly not working as well for the over 45s and working incredibly well in a disruptive way for the under 45s. Amazing. And then how does that impact when we look at the kind of message takeout? Does that confusion mean that they struggle to understand that idea of it being an easier and a better way of doing banking and looking after your finances, or does that come through well?
So I think as much as there is an element of confusion there, 40% of people still get the message that Monzo is trying to convey, which is almost like Monzo makes your life better when it comes to banking, and that comes through very much in the verbatim. So if we focus on some of the words there, like better, easy, easier, if we click on Monzo and we see some of the verbatims, no matter what problems you may have, Monzo will always have money. Monzo is a bit boring, but money organized and saved with Monzo is great fun. So the message they're trying to convey is saying with Monzo, life can be better and seamless. Monzo is an answer to financial challenges. So again, like a lot of positive reinforcement there about the message coming through
Yeah.
quite well,
Banking at
despite
Monzo is sweet. That's a nice one too.
yeah. There was even a comment around someone picked out in very much in particular how Monzo makes things better than the traditional banks. And if you
Right.
go with Monzo, you're kind of sorted. And they were saying that the ad was trying to convey that this is kind of like your moment to switch banks, which was quite particular, conveying a bit of an enemy as much as conveying a benefit of Monzo as a bank.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, this juxtaposition tends to work really well to kind of grab attention, doesn't it? It's like the enemy of the old banks and reminding people how awful it feels, and then, juxtaposing that with how it could feel and how it could be better. And I think, I mean, that's a lovely, clever way of doing it. But I think there's also a really good reminder here that you don't need to like put up a load of facts and figures about the better experience, but you can make people feel like it's going to be a better experience. You can make them imagine how it would feel if they made that change and if they use Monzo rather than another bank. And it can be way more powerful to do that, which I think is what we're seeing here. Along with the fact that even doing that implicitly and conveying it in that way, it's come through super clearly. Like, we don't always see something that's kind of less explicit coming through quite so clearly when people play it back in their own words. But what we're seeing here is a really positive picture in terms of people understanding what they're trying to do, even if they're a bit confused, the older ones only, in terms of how it's being done.
For sure.
Nice. Excellent. So, I mean, I think that's just a really positive picture. I think if we were just to sum up, it's like it really goes, it breaks the category codes, it goes beyond breaking the category codes. And the one thing that we didn't zoom in on here, but it's highly distinctive, and it even goes to the point of being quite bold and shareable. So certainly right up there in terms of like really strong, effective, creative. And it's not just a TV ad, right, is it? We see it across many other channels.
Yeah, they've expanded it to kind of static out of home media. They've even added some kind of cheekier stuff to their socials. I think that one is probably my favorite, how they've approached this
Yeah.
Twitter situation. Very controversial, but it's something that I think everyone's been talking about since the logo changed, that the
Mm.
old one is the better one, and they've made a
Yeah.
joke about it and kind of made that their Twitter headline, which is again very bold and fits with their branding. Their Twitter is actually quite a good indication of their brand
Yeah.
ethos, their brand persona, because they are very, very playful, very bold. They're not afraid to kind of like speak up and say some controversial things, which clearly like comes through in their advertising as well.
Yeah, they've got their fun tone of voice. The interesting thing about, well, there's two interesting things about this. One is that this whole idea is very, don't even know if this is a word, like memeable, for like the younger
Yeah.
generation. Like, it really can become quite contagious in how it spreads. Like, you can imagine how people will come up with their own contrasts in reaction to the campaign. It'll be interesting to see how that goes. But also in terms of thinking about a 360 campaign, out of home has a massive role to play these days. It's kind of gives brand stature, it gives credibility, it's really bold in terms of where it is. And this campaign lends itself to it perfectly, right? You don't need a lot of words to explain it. You've got really impactful, bold visuals. You actually get to juxtapose them right next to each other rather than one after the next, which you've got in video. So that contrast is really there and bold as well. So it's a really great example of having a fantastic campaign idea that can really lend itself into culture and really lend itself across different media rather than being designed for one media, which frankly nowadays is not really enough to reach people and really resonate with them in the way that you would want.
Yeah, definitely. Something that I hadn't realized and I've just seen now as well is that their negative side of the static ads are like sharp edged, and their positive Monzo side is round edged. And I wonder whether that's almost like an allusion to their card, because it's obviously like not sharp, very much like any bank card, but they're making it almost look like their bank card with that
Yes.
coral color as well,
Yeah.
very specific to Monzo.
Which
That's
makes
quite
sense because
interesting.
that's their biggest distinctive asset, right? The kind
Yeah.
of coral color and the curved side. So that makes a lot of sense. They also did one other thing I noticed in the video, which is not everyone liked the music, but the music, we always say, like, don't just slap the music on at the last minute. The music should enhance the mood and the story. And the way that the music played from like kind of quite negative, quite deep, on the negative side, and then it kind of opened up, for the positive one. I feel like they've done that visually here with the curved edges and the black and white
Yeah.
into color is a bit like the music does as well. So as always, a great idea, but also a really great execution of a great idea.
Yeah.
Okay, well, we'll leave it there. Congratulations to Monzo. Really great to see this work, and hope that we can see more financial services not doing this because it probably wouldn't necessarily be in keeping with their brand, but at least thinking really hard about how they can kind of step away from many of the ads that we see that really don't work effectively in driving the kind of equity or short-term sales for their particular products.
Yeah.
Thank you, Isa. Great to catch
Thank
up, and
you.
I'll see you next week.
See you next week.